Thanks so much for joining us today, Representative Nate. Can you tell me how your grocery tax proposal is any different than what we've seen in the many legislative sessions this has come up before?
Well, there's really not much difference to it. It would take the tax off all groceries according to the SNAP definition, which is already used for welfare recipients when they buy groceries. So it's no big leap for grocery stores to be able to just apply that exemption to all groceries. And the one difference I would say this year is that we have the ability to use the tax relief fund, which has been built up from the internet sales tax, which is dedicated only for tax relief. Utilizing that makes it so that we can do a grocery tax repeal without really hardly affecting the general fund in the state. We can meet all of our other budget priorities, including education and healthcare and infrastructure needs, and still provide the tax relief that a lot of hardworking families and businesses need.
What are you hearing from leadership about your proposal?
They are hesitant to bring it forward, which is surprising to me because it has broad support here in the legislature as a body. It has broad support across the state as well. So it's a little frustrating that one or two or three leaders here in the House get to dictate tax policy for the entire state when it's really supposed to be more of a representative government. Really, constitutionally, there's only one individual in the state that has veto power. But it doesn't work that way here in the House. You know, we have one committee chairman, probably at the direction of leadership, holding up on this great tax relief. We've passed it before with supermajorities. It got vetoed by Governor Otter before. But this governor, Governor Little, to his credit, has said that he would sign grocery tax repeal if it got to his desk. And there's only one roadblock to that right now.
You know, you wrote in a newsletter to your constituents that grocery tax cuts aren't the only tax cuts that Idaho could afford right now because of the budget surplus that we have. You know, you sit on the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee. In your mind, is there any room for strategic investments in that budget as well?
Absolutely. The update just a few days ago was that we have $662.5 million of surplus. And you know, for perspective, that is huge compared to the budget. Our whole budget is $4 billion. So $662 million is a great surplus. We can easily manage this grocery tax repeal, which comes to about $43 million, and still have hundreds of millions of dollars for those priorities, like fixing roads and bridges, making sure our education is fully funded, and doing other tax relief, like income tax cuts, property tax cuts. Those should all be on the table.
Now, on a different topic, on Thursday, your bill authorizing the state to invest in physical gold and silver passed the House. Talk to me about the logic behind this for people who aren't familiar with the reasoning. Why should the state invest in physical gold and silver?
Well, currently the state treasurer manages about $7 billion in idle monies that kind of churn through the state coffers. And so the treasurer is limited and her investment team is limited in how they can invest those dollars. It would be silly just to put them on a shelf and have the value erode as inflation kicks in. But she's allowed to invest in U.S. treasuries, in bank accounts, also in short-term debt instruments. But all of those are susceptible to inflation risk. Physical gold and silver is a protection against inflation risk, which as an economist I say is sure to come when we have all this stimulus and supply chains being disrupted. We're going to see prices go up. It would be nice to protect our Idaho investments from that through gold and silver investments.
The bill requires the state to hold gold and silver in a depository that meets certain standards and says that if such a depository doesn't exist in Idaho, it can be held in another state. So is there such a depository in Idaho now that meets this standard? And if not, what's the plan after that?
Yeah, we would want to make sure that the gold and silver is secure. So there's minimum standards on vault security for that. The vault in the Capitol here probably does not meet that standard these days. But there are two two institutions that have vaults to that standards, one in Nampa, one in Eagle. There's also in Nevada and Utah storage facilities, but we wouldn't even need to go there. We've already got them in Idaho.
There's no floor or ceiling in this bill for how much of the state's idle funds can be held in gold and silver. So how much, in your view, should the state be investing in gold and silver?
Well, I would leave that to the Treasurer's investment team. You know, that's what they do. They're professionals. They analyze markets. They analyze risk and reward. This just allows them to manage a more favorable balance between risk and reward, especially in an era of high inflation. There's no parameters on how many U.S. Treasury notes or how many corporate bonds they can hold either. And so they try and manage that, you know, again, balancing the risk and reward and their long-term versus short-term needs. And so just the ability to go to gold and silver should allow them to get the appropriate balance.
Is this a way to start a conversation about getting the country back onto the gold standard?
I don't think about the gold standard. What I'm worried about is the deterioration of the U.S. dollar, especially with so much stimulus coming in, not funded by taxpayer dollars, but just by debt or by monetary appeasement. And so if that's coming, there's really very little recourse that states have. The only thing constitutionally that we can use besides the Federal Reserve note, besides your paper dollars for money, is gold and silver coinage. And hopefully it's a start to that conversation. Maybe we ought to stock up on gold and silver coinage as a backup just in case our monetary system crumbles.
I want to go back to the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee. 2 weeks ago, you and Representative Giddings criticized Boise State University and hinted that the committee might take action against it in budget setting, perhaps splitting out Boise State's budget from the other higher universities. What would that look like?
Well, you know, I like our higher education system in the state. We have four great institutions. I've talked with presidents at the other institutions, and I know that there is a lot of animosity building against what you might call a social justice agenda going on, particularly at BSU, but to some extent at other universities like University of Idaho. And as we go through budgeting, $630 some odd million goes to higher education. That is a big chunk of our state budget. And I would like to hold universities accountable for straying from their mission. Their mission is to provide excellence in higher education. But it seems that BSU and maybe another have strayed into higher indoctrination or higher activism as part of their mission. And it's frustrated a lot of people across the state. They don't share those values. In fact, it's like their values are being ignored and saying, you know, if you're not a Black Lives Matter activist, BSU is not the campus for you. We need to indoctrinate all our students in that kind of a Marxist theory.
You know, some of the students I've spoken to across the state about this very issue say that a lot of these programs are coming directly from the students, that these are conversations that they want to have, and they view inclusivity as an Idaho value. If it's student-driven, does that change the conversation in your view?
No, it doesn't. Universities are institutions of higher education. The students come here to build their skills, to build their knowledge, to build their way of thinking. And I think too often we try to accommodate what is popular in society at the moment. And what is popular right now is widespread intolerance. And that has fed through social media and gone to students, and students want to bring that here. But our universities are run by adults. We have programs that, you know, we need to have excellence in biology, excellence in economics training. You know, those are that's what higher education is about. When we get into activism and when we get into promoting a political agenda, we have strayed away from that mission. And so no matter how much the students want to go there, the university is not their forum for trying to change society.
Is it any different than having a student-driven club that is political in nature, you know, like the Young Republicans on campus or Catholic students group? Right? How is that any different if it isn't funded by the state and it's something that the students themselves want?
Well, it absolutely uses university resources. And I think it's obvious what is going on across campuses. It's being supported and promoted. If you look at the interim president Schimpf's statement on diversity and inclusion and how they want to use university resources to create racial preferences in hiring and to create preferences and promoting critical race theory and intersectionality. And actually, I think a lot of Idahoans would be surprised to hear that there is a black graduation ceremony. There's a rainbow graduation ceremony. That is stunning to me. That does not sound like inclusivity. That sounds like segregation to me, and it's being, in part, facilitated by university resources.
Is this using the budget process to have a policy discussion?
Absolutely. I don't think you can separate budget and policy. I know JFAC wants to be all about budgets, but you look at Governor Little's Building Idaho's Future proposals that are coming through JFAC, those are absolutely policy-oriented as well.
You know, President Trump from Boise State University sent a letter to JFAC recently responding to some of the criticisms that you and Representative Giddings pointed out. You know, like Boise State University has a contract with the Boise Police Department, for example. And as we discussed, university funds don't go directly to these programs, although, as you brought up, other university resources are. Does that letter responding to those criticisms change the conversation for you in any way?
No, it was largely a defensive letter and kind of reiterated what she tried to say in the committee. But the criticism and the faults still stand. BSU has strayed from its mission, and they've tried to impose an activist policy on campus. They kicked a coffee company off campus for displaying a flag in support of our police officers. They've taken shots at the Boise Police Department, and in a form of regressive bargaining, they said to fulfill the last year of your contract, we want your officers to engage in implicit bias training. And you know, the university has a mission, and to the extent that they are trying to advance a social justice agenda, they are disserving the students because they are not focused on what they actually should be doing.
All right, Representative Ron Nate, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.